Hey guys, William Murfitt here. Welcome back to the channel and welcome to another video. In today's episode, I'm going to be looking at this Ford Kuga and doing the front discs and pads. So let's get stuck in. So first of all, I've jacked the car up. I have an actual stand under the car as well. I'm going to keep the jack and the stand both in place for 2 points of security. I'm going to do one side at a time. So 19mm socket on the wheels. Get the wheel nuts off. There's a locking wheel nut on there as well. And whip the wheel off. Shut the brakes down. Replace the disc and pads. So with the wheel off, you can see access here. Now the pads themselves are getting a little bit low. There's also quite a significant lip on the edge of these discs. I think the other side's far worse than this one, but there's scoring and all sorts on the other side. There's a safety clip here that holds the shoes together, so that comes out. The back here, these little bolts come out, and there'll be an Allen key bolt inside. So top one, bottom one, the caliper comes off. You can take this off before the caliper comes off anyway. Once the caliper's off, that can be put to one side. Ideally, a bit of cable tie or a bit of cord around the spring through the hole, just so it doesn't dangle and put too much pressure onto the flexi hose. And then we get the caliper carrier off. When they're off, I'll clean the insides with a wire brush, put the new pads in with a bit of grease on the movable parts. New disc will go on as well before the caliper goes back on. Let's do it. So the two bolts at the top are a 7mm Allen key. Just go in. And the bottom one so the top bolt is out, the bottom bolt is out as well. Next up I need to do these. So you push in and they come out. So it's a push and pull. The caliper's pretty tight on there, so all I've done is use a bar, put it in here, and try to lever the pad back a little bit to get a bit of a wobble on it. Now that should, in theory, now come off. So I'll tie that up. And I'll get out of the way, and then I'll come back to that when we return to this part. So the caliper's secured up here, and the caliper carriers come off next. I've got two 18mm nuts. I have already loosened these slightly. They were pretty tight, so I'm going to ratchet on and I palm down to loosen those. So these bolts now just get wound out, and the bolts out, the caliper carrier will be removed. Bolts are off, the carrier is removed. Disc, sometimes you have a securing screw on these discs, but if they're really tight, you take a hammer and then they're off. So the new discs, these are Brembos, I think they're 320mm. And as you can see, they're shinier than the old ones, but that will come with time, just be used, and these will look pretty similar in a few miles. What I'm going to do, let's flip it over, just make sure that the disc faces are the same, and then the studs are the same as well. Now there's a 5x108 for Fords, they're all the same. One thing I will need to do is spray a bit of brake clean around them, because they are coated in a sort of a greasy material that helps them to not corrode whilst they are in storage. As you can see, I greased up the hub. The new disc can now be offered up and pushed on and located. Let's clean up this carrier now. I've cleaned down where the pad sits on both ends. That can be bolted back on like this. New pads are also Brembo. Now you've got one pad like so that goes into the piston, and the other pad goes onto the outside. This 3M tape is removed, and that sort of causes like a bit of a sticky reaction to the inside of the caliper. Now I still like to grease inside these joins where they happen to slide back and forth on these, just to sort of help the free movement. So a bit of grease in there, a bit of grease on the other end, and then they are fitted. Right, next up is the caliper. So I've got my pipe grips. I'm just going to try and make them as big as I can, do this one-handed. They go onto the piston, onto the back of the caliper, and then you squeeze to push the piston back in. You can see the piston slowly returning into its housing. Now with these pads, because they are much thicker than what was removed, because they're new, you need to push the piston all the way back. I'll get the new pad and line that up. Let's take a bit of force. That's fitted there, and then again a little bit of grease on the bits that are going to be sliding. I've pulled the tape off the back of the other pad. That's there fitted. It's very important that when you fit the caliper, this hose isn't twisted at all. If it's twisted, then you've obviously twisted the caliper once it's been stored, in which case you need to take it back off, untwist it, because if you twist this, the flow of fluid will be massively reduced and your brakes won't work effectively. Put the two bolts back in, put the securing clip back on, bit of grease on the wheels, and then this side's complete. On to the other. Yeah, you can't do that one-handed. So two hands, locate it on the top and bottom, push the centre in to then meet the middle, push it in to fit. Everything's tight here. Just gone over and spanner checked everything. I'm going to put a bit of grease on here where the wheel meets. That just means when the wheel comes off next time, it's not going to get stuck and be a pain to remove. So, do it around the centre, in between the wheel studs, a little bit on the studs as well. Now, it's a bit of a grey area whether this is correct or not. Some people say yes, some people say no. I've always greased the studs to make it easier to slide the wheel nuts on, or screw the wheel nuts on. Anyway, wheel on, I'll get in the car, pump the brake, and then I'll go across the other side. The reason I pump the brake is because the fluid reservoir, as you push the piston up, the level will get higher. If I push the other side up, chances are it will overflow. Wheels refitted. So I'm going to get in and pump the brake. And you'll find the first pump, maybe the second pump as well, go pretty much all the way to the floor. And once it builds the pressure up, that piston is now reseated and good to be driven once more. Right, back in the car, brakes are done. The last thing I've got to do is pump up the brake pedal. Nice and firm, which is great. I put the locking one back in the glove box. Let's start the car and go for a test drive.